Nadia Makano, U.S.-Ukraine Foundation. Several of us here listened to a presentation yesterday on the state of orphans in Ukraine. And there were some very, very disheartening statistics that were raised. And I think that there are about 200,000 orphans in Ukraine. But what was more shocking, at least to me, was that only 7% are really orphans whose one parent or both parents have died. 93% are what are called social orphans, where the parents, whether it's because of issues of alcohol or other things, can't take care of them. Is there a role for the church, for maybe a commission to deal with this? Really, it sounded desperate situation.
Again, thank you for that question. I think it's a very good question, and this is one of the actually heartening things that I've seen in the last 4 to 5 years in Ukraine, is that with the changes in law, I don't know, you're probably aware that they've created a special law for the creation of orphanages of family type, family size orphanages, and also for foster care. And what's been interesting to me is that there hasn't been a command from the top in the church to start doing this, but that local monasteries, especially religious sisters, what they've started to do, there's at least 4 or 5 examples of this, where they have taken part of their monastery and remade it into an orphanage for a family size orphanage, and taken children in. And it's very heartening, because you see that they come up with the idea on their own, they implement it on their own. They can come to us when they need for some kind of repair for the building. Some of them don't use their monasteries. Some of them actually have they've been given a building that's been partially built, and they need to finish building it and then set up the orphanage there. But there are several examples, and for me it's been very heartening. And so one of the things that we've done, I don't know if you remember in the structural chart, the Bureau of Government Relations, there was somebody who works on social issues. And what we have done with this particular issue of orphans, and also with social issues in general, we are creating a database. We're doing a big survey right now of all the different social projects that are happening in the church. So starting with the parish, with monasteries, with different institutions, to find out what it is that they're doing. And the goal of this is not just to have the information and to have a database, but the goal is, the second step will be to actually organize trainings, networking, development training for the people who are working on these issues. And our main goal is actually those who are working with orphans. Another really interesting thing that's happened is that there was a priest with his wife who actually, they were part of the first group of foster parents in Lviv. And they have 2 foster children. And what they've done is they've actually created an organization to propagate the idea of foster parenthood. And also they have created it's like a sharing group with other families who went with them went through the process with them. So there are things, and what I think is interesting about this is the church responding from the local level with initiatives, and then from the Curia, what we're trying to do is meet them and help them to grow and help to spread the ideas. So I hope that answers the question.
Ksenia Kuzmich, I have a question, another social issue related question in terms of battered women. Is there any program to help the women or to raise awareness of the issue?
Caritas has a program, but I think it's more for women who were caught in trafficking. There's a center in Drohobych, like a rehabilitation center for women who are brought back into Ukraine after being caught up in human trafficking. I'm not aware of any centers for battered women, but that's actually a good thing to think about.
It seems to be a pretty widespread problem.
Boris Hlinsky, you mentioned very briefly in passing the question of chaplaincy, And I would be, and you talked, of course, about the chaplaincy in prison and penal institutions, but I would be interested, do you know what is the role of the Ukrainian Catholic chaplaincy in particular, but also of the Orthodox Church within the armed forces? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that actually started developing, I'm not sure of the date when it started developing, but in Lviv, the seminary began working very actively. I know when I first arrived in Ukraine in 2001, they already had programs of seminarians going to the local military division in Lviv and working with people there and doing chaplaincy work. And that has actually grown to the point where one of the seminarians has already become a priest, the one who was working on this issue, and they have hired him as full-time staff in this department in Lviv. So that's something that's happening on the local level. Now, the church has been approaching this as well from the national level. We have a special person designated in Kyiv who's working on relations with the government, and he does the same kind of things where they're doing training programs for the people who are assigned to military chaplaincy in the different eparchies. So there's actually a representative in each eparchy who's responsible. Hmm?
But just to follow up very briefly, in the United States and also in most other countries that the military that I'm familiar with, there is a special chaplains corps.
Right.
And does that exist in Ukraine, or is it just what you said, you know, that there are certain individuals appointed to serve as chaplains or coordinate?
It doesn't exist yet. It's actually, I think it's one of the things that they're talking about with the government to develop a separate corps, because I know that there's been talk about the military chaplaincy becoming a separate eparchy, which I think that would be what you're talking about.
Yes, I know, because the chaplains in the Western European, U.S., Canadian, etc. forces, it's a special unit, just like, you know, it's a non-combat armed service, but it's like the infantry or that's right, or signal corps, or whatever. They have their own insignia, a cross or whatever they religion they represent, but it's a special corps, like just like a medical corps or signal corps, quartermaster corps, etc.
I know that they are conducting very intensive relations with the government on establishing a more permanent military chaplaincy. I could, if you're interested, I could give you the contact information for the referent who's working on that issue in Kyiv.